Before the maps hardened into borders, before England, Denmark, and Norway become names printed in textbooks, there is only water cold, restless, and unforgiving. The North Sea does not belong to any one people. It swallows ships without caring what flag they fly. It connects coasts, carries trade, delivers armies, and erases the careless. For centuries, the sea has been the real ruler of Northern Europe. Kings rise only if the sea allows it. Imagine standing on a shoreline 1,000 years ago. The wind cuts through wool and skin alike. On the horizon, dark shapes appear, longships riding low, their sails heavy with intent. For the people watching from the coast, these shapes mean fire, tribute, or death. For the men aboard them, they mean opportunity. This is the world Canute is born into, a world where power does not sit still, where it moves with the tide, where a man's fate can be decided by weather as much as by steel. England, at the turn of the 11th century, is rich and weary. Its fields are fertile, its towns busy. Its silver abundant hand, it has been paying for that prosperity in fear. Viking raids have become a rhythm of life. Some years they come as enemies, some years as hired muscle, some years as kings in waiting. The English crown has learned to bargain with violence, to buy peace instead of enforcing it, and that bargain has left the kingdom hollowed out, uncertain, exhausted, dot across the sea. In Scandinavia, a different pressure builds. Warriors need land, leaders need silver, dynasties need legitimacy. Raiding is no longer enough. To survive, power must settle somewhere solid. It must become rule. Into this moment steps a young Danish prince named Canute, not yet the Great, not yet a king, not yet a legend. He does not inherit a stable throne. He inherits a question. Can the chaos of the North Sea be mastered? Can a kingdom taken by force be held by something more enduring than fear? Can a ruler forged in violence learn to govern peace? This is not the story of a man who commands the waves. It is the story of a man who understands them. A man who learns that the sea rewards those who respect its limits and destroys those who don't. And for a brief, extraordinary moment in history, Canute will bend the currents of war, faith, wealth, and law into a single design, turning the North Sea from a boundary into an empire. This is the story of how that moment was made and why it could never last. Canute the Great didn't start as a legend. He started as a problem the North Sea couldn't ignore, a young Danish prince born into a world where power traveled by ship, where kingdoms were stitched together by oaths one season and torn apart by steel the next. By the time he steps into history clearly, England is already tired of raids, tired of paying for peace, tired of kings who can't quite keep the sea out. That exhaustion is a quiet background music to everything Canute becomes. His father was Sweyn Forkbeard, the kind of ruler who understood that England wasn't just a rich prize. It was the hinge of the North Sea world. Control England and you control ports, silver, prestige, and the ability to project force in every direction. Sweyn invaded and, for a brief moment, England fell into Danish hands. But history loves its sudden reversals. Sweyn died in early 1014, and the conquest immediately wobbled. Canute, still young, found himself holding a crown that wasn't firmly nailed down. The English nobility practical, suspicious, and very aware of how quickly fortunes change, called back their old king, Ethelred the Unready. Canute had to retreat. That retreat matters because it teaches the central lesson of his life. Taking a kingdom is not the same as keeping it. Winning battles is loud. Building rule is quiet, slow, and relentless. He returned in 1015, and this time the invasion wasn't a raid or a gamble, it was an operation. Ships, men, logistics, alliances. England was fractured, and Canute knew how to press on fractures until they split. Ethelred died in 1016, and the fight became a contest between Canute and Thelred's son, Edmund Ironside. Edmund's nickname tells you everything. He was tough, fast to respond, hard to break. They fought a series of clashes that feel, in hindsight, like the last violent spasms of one era. At Ascendant in 1016, Canute won the decisive battle. Not a clean, and then it was over victory, but decisive in the way that convinces enough powerful people to stop betting against you. What follows is one of the most important choices Canute makes. Instead of trying to erase the English political world, he absorbs it. He and Edmund reach an agreement to split the kingdom-man arrangement. That says as much about exhaustion as diplomacy. Then Edmund dies shortly after, and suddenly Canute is king of all England. In another story, that would be the ending. For Canute, it's the opening. because the question hanging over him is simple and brutal. What is he? To the English, he is a conqueror, foreign, dangerous, possibly temporary. To his Danish followers, he is their war leader, expected to reward loyalty with land and silver. To the church, he is a ruler whose legitimacy will be measured by how well he protects monasteries, honors saints, and supports order. To his rivals across Scandinavia, he is either the future overlord of the North or an overextended opportunist. Canute has to be all of those things at once without being torn apart by any of them. His method is not romantic. It's statecraft with a knife kept within reach. He reduces threats with precision. Some rivals are executed, some are exiled, and some are folded into the new order if they can be trusted or watched. He reorganizes power in England by relying on the earldoms, massive regional power bases that can either stabilize the kingdom or break it. Over time, England is effectively divided into great zones of authority. The names you hear, Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, East Anglia, aren't just regions. They're political engines. Canute uses them like a craftsman uses tools, carefully, sometimes swapping the hand that holds them, sometimes replacing the whole piece if it's cracked. And then there's the money, the great invisible bloodstream of his reign. England had long been a sophisticated fiscal state by medieval standards, with systems of taxation and coinage that could raise enormous sums. The Danegeld tax, money paid originally to buy off raiders, becomes something else under Canute, a resource to pay armies, secure loyalty, and keep the machinery of rule turning. Here's the paradox: England's past humiliation becomes the financial foundation for its stability under a conqueror. Canute understands that you don't end the need for payment in a warrior world. You redirect it. To make conquest feel like continuity, he cultivates the church. This is not just personal piety, though he did present himself as devout. It's also political technology. The church can speak the language of legitimacy in a way armies cannot. Bishops and abbots connect regions, preserve records, preach obedience, and frame a king's authority as part of God's order rather than merely the result of a battle. Canute gives gifts, protects ecclesiastical privileges, and positions himself not as a pagan outsider, but as a Christian ruler defending a Christian realm. That is critical because England remembers the terror of earlier Viking raids on monasteries. Canute needs England to see him not as the next wave of that terror, but as the man who ended it. One of the smartest and most symbolic steps he takes is marrying Emma of Normandy, the widow of Ethelred. This is not a love story. It is a political bridge engineered with vows. Emma ties Canute to the previous royal line, connects him with Normandy across the Channel, and creates a narrative that his kingship is not merely conquest, but succession. Emma is also formidable in her own right, experienced in courts, aware of dynastic stakes, and crucial for the legitimacy of any children they have together. In a time when inheritance is a weapon, who your mother is can be as important as who your father is. Once England is stable enough to breathe, Canute turns back toward the sea, because he isn't building a simple kingdom. He's building a North Sea empire, an interlocking set of crowns and loyalties spanning England, Denmark, and Norway, with influence reaching toward parts of Sweden. This is where his greatness becomes visible. Holding one kingdom in the medieval world is difficult. Holding multiple, separated by water, with different elites and expectations, is an art that few manage for long. Denmark matters because it is the core of his family power and the anchor of Danish legitimacy. Norway matters because it controls vital routes and can threaten Denmark from the north, while also projecting power into the Atlantic world. If you imagine the North Sea as a circular road, Canute wants all the gates along it. He wants to decide who trades, who raids, who travels, who is safe, and who is exposed. The struggle for Denmark intensifies after the death of his brother Harald. Canute claims the Danish throne. While ruling Denmark while based in England requires delegation, trusted men, family, lieutenants. Delegation is dangerous. The more power you give someone, the more they can imagine themselves without you. Canute balances this by sending representatives, by enforcing loyalty, and by ensuring that England's wealth underwrites his broader ambitions.